Hello, everyone. How you doing? I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in to our spring speaker series on local elections. I want to briefly introduce myself. My name is Carvel Wilkins. I'm from Metro Detroit, Michigan. Um, I love learning about new people, and I love, you know, uh, learning more about party members and their viewpoints. And that brings me to Amar, one of the people that is going to be speaking today, right now. Um, he is the chair of the Illinois Party and the party state development director. Amar, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Carvel. My name is Amar Patel. I am the Illinois State Chair for the Illinois Solidarity Party. I'm also the State Development Director at the National Committee. I've wore a lot of hats in the ASP, including Chair and Vice Chair, and I was the Vice Presidential candidate in 2020 with Brian Carroll. And so I've been around the block, you might say, for quite a while.
That's awesome. Thank you. So I want to explain to you guys real quick what the format of this discussion will be. Amar is gonna be talking, and he's gonna after he's talking, please hold all your questions until later. After he finishes talking, we'll be able to ask Amar questions in regards to his topic of his conversation, and feel free to ask anything in the comment section. Amar, could you take it away?
Sure enough, Carvel. Thank you so much for the introduction. So my talk, the topic is a local solidarity revolution. And one of the things that we talk about in the National Committee is, what are the plans? How are we going to grow the party? How do we engage people? And I've been at this now since 2018, and surely there's been many party members that have been around longer than I have, since the beginning even. But since 2018, there's been a lot of growth in the party, a lot of changes. We've had two presidential election cycles, and I would say both of which I was pretty intimately connected to, either as a candidate in 2020 or as a member of the National Committee in 2024. And so I've kind of had the inside peek at how party operations go and how the major campaigns go. And so first I want to speak to that, right? And we saw a lot of growth and interest in 2020 with the Carroll campaign. And it was COVID. It was the end of the first Trump run, and that was just a very contentious campaign. And I think that, one of the things that, as a growing party, as a party from 2016 to 2020 that added a lot of state chapters, added a lot of Facebook followers, a lot of Twitter followers, we definitely made a big jump from 2020, sorry, from 2016, I should say. We were out there in media, in news coverage, in video or newspaper or radio interviews. And so, we saw a really nice growth from what happened in 2016. And so, as we came out of the 2020 election cycle, there was a lot of excitement. There were a lot of new people, a lot of new state chapters, new state leaders. And we dug into a very standard plan of trying to get people to run for office at the local, or I wouldn't say the local level, more like the state level. And we had some candidates that ran for either representative or Senate or governor. California ran several candidates, and other people around the country. And they were great campaigns. They got our name out there. They were exciting within the party, but the results of the campaigns weren't astounding. And it's just a factor of a first past the post voting system and the power of the duopoly, especially when it comes to money and raising money. And one of the things that, as I came into the party in 2018, that I when I fell in love with the party, when I saw the platform at the time, where it checked off all the boxes that I was dissatisfied with the other parties, concerning the other parties. I spread the word with my friends. And I'm an old man, like I'm 51 now. I was in my mid 40s then. And, I've got a lot of friends, like I'm the Knights of Columbus. So I have a lot of folks at church that I'm connected with. I have a very extensive network of friends from college still that I am still connected to when I was involved at the Newman Center there. And just locally, the parents of the friends of my kids, so a pretty good size through sports and activities and band. I mean, we just a lot of local friendly connections. And, people who I thought would be amenable to the party, especially folks at church, I would tout our platform and say, hey, I'm involved in this political party. You should check it out. It's great. And people weren't super excited about it. They liked the idea, but very, very few people joined. Donated, they didn't donate, they didn't spread the word, they wouldn't share our social media. And I thought, you guys are so strange, you're so weird. I mean, like, here is what our faith and values are in a nutshell, in a very simplistic platform that people can appreciate. And you're just all very odd for not wanting to get involved and to spread the word. And so I kind of perceived, that was my perception in 2018 and 2020 when I was running as vice presidential candidate. And even for several years after that, I'd still be sharing the word about the party. And just thinking that how strange it is that people wouldn't get involved. And what I've come to realize over the last year plus is that, my involvement, and then those of you who are watching that are actively involved in the ASP passionately, we're the weirdos, right? We're the weird ones. And that might sound weird to hear, but what I mean by that is we're the folks that are multiple standard deviations away from the normal person when it comes to involvement and energy and activity and interest in a third party like the American Solidarity Party, in a new idea, in a bold new concept to get people thinking in a different way. We're the weird ones, right? Like, we're the ones that will spend our own time and energy and money on something that everyone else thinks is frivolous and doesn't have a chance. Because we believe in the principles and the promise of something better, right? And when I say weird, I don't mean in a bad way. I just mean that we're outside the norm. And so our approach to the party, coming from a leadership perspective, has been, well, if we get the word out there, if we just get more people knowledgeable that the party exists, then we will engage more people. Because surely, like, we have found out about the party and become interested and active in it. When more people find out about the party, they will become interested and activated in it. And I just don't think that it's true that it's that easy, right? Because I think we're hitting, a high. We're hitting the people that already would be interested in us, that would be active and just jump on board, jump into the water with both feet, so to say. Like, we've hit a lot of those people. Surely there's more out there. I'm not saying there aren't, but when I first started the party, I thought, hey, there's millions of people. There's millions of Christians that are ready to jump into this, and people of goodwill and other faiths that would be part of a socially conservative, economically, let's say, solidarian party. And it's just not the case in my opinion, that just getting the word out there is good enough. Like, if we build it, they will come is not a mentality that has worked out for us particularly well. And I don't know that it would work out kind of running out that same mentality alone. Although that we shouldn't stop kind of our general processes, because some of them are fruitful and they're just necessary. And so, I'll tell you a very significant moment, like the moment where I made the switch flipped in my head. And that's when I got to know Dustin Pieper, who was a member of the Illinois Solidarity Party. He's on the committee, and he is at the time, he was an appointed board member of the city council in Batavia. He was an alderman. in his ward. And I had the chance to talk to him and just kind of dig into, what his background was. And he said that he had moved into the town of Batavia, Illinois, about, 18 months or 2 years ago. And as a young man in his young 30s, unmarried, in a new job, in a new town, not having connections to that town. It was his job that brought him here. But someone being very interested in politics, he would go to every single town council subcommittee meeting that was available on the calendar. And so it might be the zoning commission on Tuesday, it could be the fire council on Wednesday, it could be the pre-meeting for the city council on Thursday. And he just went to all these meetings, just with a pencil and a notepad and a smile on his face. And after a while, people would ask, like, and who are you? And what are you doing here? Because he just was always there. And he says, oh yeah, I moved into town and I'm just very interested in how the town operates. I'm just curious about how the sausage is made at a very local level. And, am I okay being here? And they said, of course, it's an open meeting and you're welcome to be here. And so this went on for several months. And at one point, at one of the town council meetings, one of the aldermen said that he was moving out of his district, but into a different district, still in town. But he said, according to the bylaws, he was going to have to resign his post. And the process was that they had to fill the seat with an appointment, but not an election. And so they said to Dustin, are you in that district? And he said, yes, I am. And they said, okay, well, we have to still put out an interest expression out to the community to see if anyone else is interested. But after the people who are interested apply, then we'll have a get together with the town council members and we'll appoint someone from that list. And he said, sure. Well, the benefit of being constantly present and friendly and communicative in these town council meetings made Dustin the automatic choice pretty much for that position. So then he was appointed to the meeting, the town council. And so I said, that's fascinating, Dustin. What I would appreciate as the state chair that would put out newsletters to our membership is if you could just write maybe a couple paragraphs that explain, how you got to your position and how others could be more involved in their own towns. And so he said, oh, sure, I'll do that for the next newsletter. And he returned to me a 3-part, multiple thousand-word essay on his experiences getting involved in Batavia Town Council. And I was floored. I was like, wow, I was only expecting, a short blurb for a newsletter. But what that ended up becoming was a 3-part blog series on our solidarity-party.org blog site. And he did the work for me. Like, I didn't have to break it up myself. He said there are three major components about getting involved into local politics, right, in your own town. And he said the first thing is that you have to get informed. You got to find out what's going on, right? And so to get informed, that has multiple layers. And I've been telling everyone that I know as a state development director that this is the process, right? This is what you want people to be able to do. Is if your town has a website, which most towns do, go look at the website. I was ashamed to say that before having this encounter with Dustin a couple years ago, I had never gone to my town website outside to pay my water bill, which comes up once a month. But I didn't know what when the town council met in my town, what the subcommittees were, who my alder people were, and stuff like that. And so, that was the first thing he said. Your town probably has like a newsletter of some kind or some other kind of informational portal. And she goes, check out what's going on. When are the festivals and the parades, different events where people get together, just so those kind of things are happening. All that stuff should be out there for people to appreciate and find out. And so that's his first phase, is just be aware of what's going on in town. And, it's where you live, right? It's the things that are happening. It should be important to you. The second thing he said was get involved, right? You got to get informed and then get involved. And it's go to those things. Once you find out what is going on in your town, just show up, right? Show up for a town council meeting, or show up for a parade or a festival, or the farmers market, right? Get involved by, once you find out about something interesting going on in town, talk to your neighbors about it. Say, hey, did you hear about this farmers market's going on? You want to go check it out? If it's close to your house, we have a lot of parks in our area that host different events, that you could walk over to a park and see what's happening. And once you do that, you'll be out there. You'll be meeting people. You'll be shaking hands. And just as one of the things in the American Solidarity Party is we all believe in community. And so what better way than to get involved in your community than getting out there and seeing people. And he goes, in the final stage that he wrote was get elected. And I said that, you could, depending on your town, and in my town, this is definitely the case, obviously in Batavia was the case, is you can get appointed as well, right? If you get involved and you're out there, you're shaking hands, you're meeting folks, that you can have impact in an appointed position or an elected position, or just kind of in an advisory position. And so I took his words to heart. And so, like I said, I went to the website and I found out what was going on. And I was very, on the continuation of my embarrassment, I was very embarrassed to find out that in my district, so our town is broken up into 6 districts, the trustee for my district lives on my physical block. I live on 17th Street. This gentleman also lives on 17th Street, about 10 houses down the street. And I never knew that. This is a person who's been trustee for 2 years, and I never knew that he lived on my block. And so I, got in touch with him through his email and said, hey, if you have a chance, I live on your block. I'm just, interested in kind of what committees you're the chairperson for, and, what your approach is and your vision is for town, just out of interest. And he was gracious, and we had a phone call, probably about 45 minutes, just kind of chatted on the phone about, what his interests were and kind of what my interests were, and to support him and to advance our town, not the party. I did say I was involved in, politics in a very communitarian way, and he appreciated that. He had never heard of us, but he was cordial in asking some questions, and he's not a member or anything, but he listened, and it was quite pleasant conversation. And so since then, I've also, through him, made a connection with another trustee who is the one in charge of our local business development. It's called Economic Development Committee, which is something I'm very passionate about, is local business. And I had lunch with that guy, and it was also very, very pleasant. And he spoke about local development in a way that I thought for sure that he was a follower of Strong Towns, which is an organization that the American Solidarity Party is very friendly with. Chuck Marone is on our board of advisors, and I've spoken to him several times about small town development and planning to have positive, sustainable outcomes for families and communities all around the country. That's what he does that's his passion, and that's his livelihood. And so, but this guy had never heard of Strong Towns. He just was someone that was interested in that sort of thing. So I've been sharing with him articles that I read, and we have a good rapport where we go back and forth and discuss these concepts and how we might implement them in town. So here I am, someone who is not appointed or elected, but I have the ear of 2 trustees, just because I've made conversation with them and reached out. And so, do I have power? No, but I do have a voice, and I have probably an outsized voice compared to someone who just shows up and votes every couple of years when we have town elections. And so what I would say with this is that, Dustin's advice is very critical. right? And I think that all members of the ASP really need to take that advice and heed it, right? So get informed, get involved, and get elected, appointed, or get into contact with your elected officials. I think that's going to be, I think that should be something that we push very strongly in the party, and almost to the point where we could even survey and take a census of how many people know. Like, that is a methodology for really pushing our values in politics into the community space, and try to get that number to 100%. And that we want everyone to have those tools in their tool bag so that they can go out there and spread the word. And so to advance that, to take it like one step further, is this last election cycle in my town, we had 4 gentlemen who were running for library board. And I had the pleasure and honor of working with them to try to get the word out, right? To try to develop some solidarity and get names, get them some name recognition for the election. And so kind of going back to like 2018 when I started, I have, dozens, if not hundreds of friends and people that I know in town here. And I want to say none of them were ASP members. So when I look at the Illinois voting member list, I would see my town of Lombard once or twice for my wife's name, but no other people had that address. And this is with me running even as vice president in 2020. Several of those folks definitely voted for me, and I still hear them say that every now and then, where they're like, I voted for you, for vice president. And I'm like, thank you. I appreciate that. We were luckily on the ballot in 2020 in Illinois. But people weren't joining, right? They weren't engaged. They weren't active. And it always bothered me. It was like, we can do something here, but even the folks in my own town weren't interested. And so when we ran these 4 candidates, the first thing was they all became members, because I said, I really can't spend too much time supporting you with kind of as a party apparatus if you don't actually become members. So they did. And shortly after that, their wives did, and some of their friends and neighbors did. And so, we went from having a couple of members in town that we now have about 20 members that are in my town, right, of the American Solidarity Party, which out of our entire state chapter, which is about 150 people, that's like a 1/7 of our voting membership. And my point to that is, getting people involved and running for office and creating a base of supporters for that process, that's a surefire way to get members, right? Because now it's not this esoteric race that can't be won. It is boots on the ground, knocking on doors, putting up door hangs, shaking hands, having conversations for a race that is absolutely winnable, right, at the local level. Even though we lost that race, if we had better organization and more turnout, we could have won that race easily. There were thousands and thousands of people that did not vote in that race. And so, and a lot of that has to do with we just don't have the political savvy, right? We don't have the understanding that you got to go out and you have to knock on doors and shake hands. We don't do that, especially as conservatives. There isn't as much of a regard for political action at the very local level, right? Progressives have really taken over that space of being obnoxiously to a certain aspect about aggressively taking over, especially in the Chicago suburban area where I live. Changing the hearts and minds of people that aren't that particularly well informed, that they can spread their message and it takes hold because no one else is spreading a counter message. Okay. So if we had more people, and I should say this, if we had more people running for office is obviously a great thing, but you don't have to run for office. What I have found is in this process, before our candidates were even running, I was paying attention to the other local races, especially for township. Excuse me. And I saw that there was a lot of interplay in the Republican ranks, and I got in touch with some folks that were friends of our library folks, and got a lot of information and connections within the Republican township inner party fighting. And it turns out that a lot of those people are dissatisfied with how kind of the old guard of the Republican Party is operating. And I explained to them like what the American Solidarity Party was about, and a couple of them actually joined. And they gave me the inside scoop about what's going on the GOP side. So, you know, this was not really in connection with any race. It was just kind of insider politics. But, you know, these people were all people that wanted to do good in their township / basically like a subdivision of a county. And what they found was that a lot of the Republican higher ups were playing, they called it the good old boys network, and they were pushing people out that didn't agree with their particular stances. And it wasn't even on political issues. It was more on like power structures, right? And so, you know, we have opportunities like that, right? That I never knew about. It's just, again, not knowing, not being involved, not having conversations. You know, it kind of leaves us out in the dark, right? And so as individuals, we have an outsized influence and power at the local level to make a difference, right? Where we don't at the national level. And, you know, we don't have the money to do that at the national level. We don't have the bodies, right? And the clout to do that. So I definitely think that's a big deal. I'll give you one more example. Is after our library board race was over, I saw that all around Illinois, there were other similar races happening, and we were only involved in 2 of them, one in my town and one in Woodridge. If you saw the Richard Petritus talk before mine, he spoke about that race. But across Illinois, there were more races that had some contentious, you know, battles over ideological issues. And so I reached out to an organization that is called the Illinois Grassroots Coalition, and they responded right away, and they were very interested in what I had to say about trying to organize local candidates to fight, you know, for our values. And so I've been talking with the vice chair of that group and one of their committee members on how to create a training document for and procedures for the next time we have library board races. Like, how do we get people informed? How do we get them involved? Give them the tools that they might need in order to win those races. And if maybe not win, maybe just to create a base of support so that maybe down the road, another candidate might win and have a positive impact, bringing our values into that town. And if we can do that, you know, successfully in 1 or 2 places, and then replicate those results by sharing the information and helping each other, right? Now you have the possibility of having 2 or 3 towns that are neighbors, make it 5, make it 10, make it 15, and now we have a county position that we can run for because we have enough people in a network that we can make a difference in a county election. And if we can do counties, we can do, you know, a big enough regional area that maybe we can get a candidate for representative, right? If we can do that, maybe we can get a candidate for Senate. So when I say like a local solidarity revolution, I mean, I do mean, you know, building up the ASP very locally so that we have enough pockets of folks that can take over, you know, chunks and chunks of areas. So, so I think that is the crux of my thoughts on how the ASP should proceed. What does that exactly look like? I think it definitely looks like something where you kind of have to have, you know, materials prepared, like a website that guides folks into how to go about getting, your friends engaged. How do you get them out there helping you, getting support? How do you get a contact list and cultivating that list, making it bigger? How do you have a local newsletter perhaps that lets people know what's going on in town so that your name gets out there and people know you're serious? How do you connect with other groups that have common values and interests? These are all things that we don't have right now. We absolutely need. And once people start realizing that we can do this, that you have strength in what you can do at the local level, then you have strength in numbers at the local level, and then we can really start making headway on building up our membership, building up our skill sets. And we've actually talked about having the bench, right? Like, right, a lot of the times we'll be looking for candidates in the American Solidarity Party, but the problem is, like, we just don't have a bench of people that have political savvy, right? No one is active in political campaigns. They haven't run. They haven't supported other people who've run, and so it's hard to just jump into a position where you are a candidate, right? If you have had some of that background and support skills from helping someone else, I mean, it just makes it so much easier. So the local solidarity revolution is my kind of view at the next 4 years of ASP development, is having an entire army of folks that are engaged, and that, as I said, as Dustin Pieper would say, that have gotten informed about what is going on in their towns. They've gotten involved in their town councils, amongst their neighborhoods, in their local, well, especially in their local churches and service organizations. And then they've looked into actually had some kind of power as appointed officials or elected officials, or just being connected to the officials. And, these are human beings, and they're friendly. They like to listen to the people in their towns. And you can have influence that way. You can get information and have connections to get yourself elevated in the political space. So with that, I think, we can move to a Q&A period and see what people have to ask.
Great. We have some questions that were submitted to us, and so let's go by asking the questions. What states you think would be most fruitful for ASP action electoral success? Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the perspective that I'm coming from in this talk and in general would be, I wouldn't even think of states, right? Like, every town is fruitful for maybe not like specifically ASP success, because a lot of times at the town level, your race isn't necessarily a partisan race. Like, ASP won't necessarily pop up on, it definitely won't come up on the ballot, right? So in our town, when people run, it's just your name. There's no D or R, or in our case, A, or whatever symbol whatever letter, if it was one letter, it's just your name. And so I think when we look at the concept of ASP success, right, I think a lot of times you want to say, well, what did our ASP candidates that had that moniker on them, how many votes did they get? And that's how we've looked at things for many years. And my thought is, success has got to be measured long term. If we want that as a state, like a state representative or a state senator, or a federal representative or federal senator, we're going to need a huge army of supporters in that race, right? And starting like with the lowest of those levels would be a state representative. Even to get into, if you look at any of the state representative positions in my area, in a suburban area, you need 30,000 votes, and you probably need to spend $100,000 to $200,000, right, to secure that seat. Like, most of the people who won those seats had spent in that region in my area. I kind of looked that stuff up. And we spent like $100,000 on our presidential candidate in the American Solidarity Party, right? And that was a lot of the money that we had. So, as the ASP goes, like, we don't have $100,000 to spend on a state representative race even to win that race. And so we got to start somewhere, and it's much cheaper to run like a local election where a lot of that vote total, especially in off-year elections in Illinois, it's like you're voting in not just the off year, but you're voting in April. So the voter turnout is very low. That a lot of head work done with boots on the ground, personal communication between operatives can get a lot of votes out, right? And so I think that every state, every locality has opportunities, and every member or anyone who's watching, whether you're a member or not, it's all ripe, right, for some kind of success. And it depends on how you measure that success, but I think you can make if everyone just took one step further every day or every week, when you have an opportunity to make a gain, if everyone in the party did that, we would see tons and tons of fruit, right? What the metric is for success is not as important as everyone advancing and becoming more skillful.
That's awesome, man. That's great. That's really great. Next question. Does partisan affiliation affect nonpartisan races, excuse me?
Yes, absolutely. So like I was talking about our library board race, one of the candidates against us she was incumbent on the library board, gets some kind of stipend every month from the Democratic Party. And it's something that is declared within the state informational reporting guidelines. Like she makes enough money throughout the course of the year, which is $5,000, that she has to report monthly what her donations are. And so it's not the library board in my town is not a paid position, right? Except for her, it is a paid position, but by the Democrats, not by the town, right? And so they got a lot of the local Democratic Party did endorse the folks running against us, and they weren't necessarily Democrats, but a very, very loud pro-abortion PAC, Political Action Committee, dumped thousands of dollars into our town for this race, which is very unusual because it didn't have anything to do with abortion. It is a library board race, but it definitely was a partisan situation, even though on the ballot it was a nonpartisan race.
All right, that's great, man. That's awesome. Great answer. Thank you. Next question. I know you mentioned going door to door, but that's what's the best way to make local community connections. So when you're running for a local election, for supporters, oops, kind of cut off a little bit.
I get the idea. Yeah. I mean, I think what we did was we didn't go door to door straight down the doors, right? Like down a block or whatever. In our space, and I think probably in most localities, I mean, the Freedom of Information Act allows you to access certain levels of voter data, and so you can't. It is your ballot is a secret ballot. Like no one knows how you voted. But what is not secret is if in Illinois, at least, it's an open primary, but you have to declare which Democrat or Republican ballot you want in the primary. And if you choose to be independent, there's no one on your ballot. Like you don't even get to vote in the primary because there's nobody to vote for. And so that information is recorded in a database, and you can ask for that information. And so we had the list of Republican and Democratic primary voters, and then the people who voted in what we call the consolidated election, which is the off-year election that comes up in April every 2 years. And that's where you vote for library board, school board, and your town councils all across the state of Illinois. And so the way we approached it was we didn't think we would have much traction with Democratic primary voters. So we focused heavily on Republican voters, Republican primary voters, and even more so on the folks that voted in the consolidated election 2 years ago, right? Because that's like a very small group of people out of the, I want to say 20,000 registered voters in town, only about 4,000 or 5,000 vote in the consolidated election, the off-year election. And so it made it more manageable. We hit them with door hangs and knocked on those doors, and had emails for some of them as well. It depends on what information you give the county, right? But then, one of the big things, and this is something that I really want to type up a good discussion on this, and to get people's mind wrapped around it, is that, every person, and Carvel yourself, I'm sure if I said to you, let's sit down and write down 10 names of people that if you went to them and said, hey, I need you to vote for this person on the ballot for this particular race. And it wasn't like, mayor or obviously president of the United States or whatever, where people have strong opinions, right? It's like for the city commissioner position or whatever, where most people don't really care. But if you said to them, I need you to vote for this person because of their friendship with you and their trust in you as a person of character, they'd be like, yeah, okay, sure, I'll go and vote for that person, right? And they wouldn't even do any research. They would just take it on your word, that person is a quality person that deserves their vote. And so I think most people have like maybe 5 to 10 people like that. And I think what we can do is we just need people to be bold enough to get those people to go out and vote, right? And then find out from those people who is bold enough to get like 5 people to multiply those 5 people, who are like the people who are one tier above that are explaining what I'm explaining to you to their 10 friends, so they get 10 of their own friends. Like they're in charge of like 100 people. Someone said it's like a pyramid scheme. I said, I guess if you want to look at it that way, but it is kind of like multi-tiered, where some people are just more go-getters, right? They're the people that are out there that can convince folks of doing a little bit more. And if we can build out those networks, we can get hundreds, if not thousands, of people into a flow of doing something together in a solidarity kind of method, right? Where we're coordinated and organized in a process. And so I think we definitely underplay the power of communication and systematically creating these connections. And so I think, anyone who's running for office, you should start with that. Like you start making a list of people that just will be behind you because of who you are, and then get them to figure out who will be behind them to take your name and run with it, right? There's definitely people that will only just go out and vote. That's all you can count on them for, is to pull, to bubble your name, and that's it. But then there's people that will do more. And I'll give you a perfect example. I have a good friend of mine in town that talked to her about ASP. She's in our ASP voting member, our Illinois group. She's been in there for years, but she never became a member, but supported us. And so we need to get 100 signatures for our folks to be on the ballot. And I reached out to her and I said, hey, can you sign this form for me? I'm going to swing by. And she said, absolutely. So I was over there, and she signed my form, and she goes, she had her husband sign. She said, come upstairs and sign this form. And he goes, you know what you should do? You should go around to this guy's house. He's just around the corner. He'll sign your form for you. I'll call him, right? So she called him, and he goes, yeah, sure, have him come over. And I said, well, actually, I got some extra blank forms here. Would you mind? Do you think you could get like 10 people to sign this signature form for me, so that like you've picked one person immediately out of your mind? Like, do you have like 10 other friends? And she said, oh yeah, I'll do that. So I left her a couple of forms. I go to this guy's house, and he's all gung-ho about it. He's like, oh, I'll totally sign that. I go, hey, do you have, like 10 friends that you think might sign? And he's a member of the Knights of Columbus in a different parish than I am. He goes, yeah, absolutely. So I go home after getting their 2 signatures or 3 signatures, and I get a phone call first from the guy. He said, "I just went out down my street and I got 10 signatures. Do you have any more sheets? I can probably get 10 more." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Like I didn't think it would be that fast. It was literally an hour. He walked down his block and just got 10 of his neighbors to, and he's even older than I am. But he just is in the neighborhood. People know him, right? They respect him. And they said, "Oh, you want me to sign that? Absolutely. For you, anything." Right. And she comes back the week later and says, "Oh, I got 20 signatures. I went to church and I just found a bunch of people that were praying before church and I had them sign it." I'm like, okay, but those people exist. And I don't think we understand how easy it is to get out there and get those people activated.
That's awesome, man. You hit on some really great points, and that's very, anybody that just listened to what you just said, that's, man, that hits home, and it's all about connecting, like a web. That's great, man. I love that. So the next question, do you recommend talking to ASP right away, talking about ASP right away in your conversations with people as you build your local network, or would you recommend waiting to a later conversation? Can you explain your reasoning?
Yeah, that's always a great fine tooth comb. Like you have to really think about which way am I going to go with this. And if you know someone real well, right, and they know you, like you're just close friends. I hit everyone that I knew with ASP. They know where I'm at. So most people, I don't even have to have that conversation. But very specifically, when I talk to the guy on my block who is my representative, my committee member, I didn't bring it up right away. We talked for a while. We made a good relationship, and I said, "You know what, like, we got to a good place in this conversation, and I didn't think it would hurt to mention that I was active in a third party, especially since at the town level, the biggest issues would be like community development and family friendly development around town," which he brought up, right? He says, "I'm really I want the community to thrive, and I really like." His goal is to have families be able to enjoy all of our amenities safely and effectively. And I said, absolutely, amen to that. I'm part of this third party that really believes in having opportunities for families to grow and thrive, right? And he's like, "That's cool," right? And there was no negative, connotation to anything we talked about. And he may have gone and looked up the ASP, or he probably didn't, right? Like it wasn't anything for him to worry about. On the flip side, like, you might come out in that conversation and say, "Hey, I'm part of this third party," and someone who is looking for something to fight about might say, "Well, what are your opinions on these national issues?" Right? And if you're trying to engage someone on local stuff, I mean, we could probably agree on like 95% of local issues, but disagree on abortion rights, and then not be able to advance on our local issues because we're going to have, a fight about abortion rights, which isn't going to. It has no impact on our direct, work together at the local level, right? That you can still work in solidarity with people to advance everything else besides this issue or that issue. Obviously, you can't agree on that issue, and so if they want to promote something like that in your town, like now you're just at an impasse, right? Like I wouldn't be supporting that person, but so that's kind of where I would go, and I think that's my explanation for the reasoning is that you kind of, but part of that is being politically savvy, right? Is having conversations about politics with a lot of people a lot of the time, like very often, to get a sense of how those might go. Because if you don't do it very often, how do you know? How do you know how things are going to go? You have no experience to base it off of.
All right, that's great. That's amazing, man. So we'll no longer be taking any more questions, but thank you guys for all attending. At 5:00 we'll have another a speaker, and so join us, and we'll have Peter Sunsky. He'll talk about civil responsibilities and subsidiarity. So please tune in, and you'll have an opportunity to ask questions too as well. Thank you once again, and thank you, Amar, for helping us all out, and we appreciate you all. Have a great day.
Thanks, Carvel. Take care.
Thank you.